Welcome to Chapter 1, Section 6, and this is the section on relations. So it's kind of an intro to relations. And what are relations? Well, they're just kind of relationships between different numbers. In this section, it's not even going to define for us what is the relationship. We just see that we have some numbers that are related to each other, and usually we write these ordered pairs, right? The 4 comma -1 -2 comma -2 1 comma 0. These are ordered pairs, right? We write these in x comma y order, right? And it doesn't have to be x or y necessarily, or sometimes actually it's also x comma. Let me make this consistent. So it's also f of x if it's a function, right? Now we don't know for sure it's a function though, in our case, but yeah, x comma y, and the idea behind this is that the first number is the independent variable. Independent. What does independent mean? That means I can do whatever I want, right? I'm independent. So independent is that it means that we can essentially just choose what x is. We choose x, and then the idea here, this relationship is defined by choosing an x and getting a y. Getting a y out. It's called the dependent variable. I'll just put dep and independent and dependent variable. Or in this case, just relationship, right? So what we do is we choose an x, we get a y. I don't get to choose y. Y just happens because x was put into this machine or relationship or function, right? Put an x in, we get a y out, and you put an independent, you choose an independent, and you get a dependent. All right, so let's write these as a table first. So as a table, we can do our old-fashioned kind of T-chart. You guys probably saw this, in pre-algebra. So we have our x and our y coordinates, right? So, let's do this in color too. So our dependent, and if they're not called x and y, it's okay. They're just dependent, independent, and dependent. Red for dependent, and we can put that down here too. Dependent here, and independent. We put the independent in, we get the dependent out. Right, okay, so let's go ahead and list these, and we can do it in any order, but it might be nice to do it in order from least to greatest, right? So let's do that. So for our greens, what's our smallest independent? Well, we've got 4, we've got -2, we've got 1, so -2 is our smallest. What's our next one? Well, okay, let's see, we've got 1 is the next smallest, and then 4 is the bigger of the 3. And how about for our dependent, or our y coordinates, right? We've got a -1, we've got a -2, and a 0. Okay, so but make sure we place the corresponding dependent. So we're not going to just put these in order, right? We're gonna write them in relationship. So and I put in a -2, I get out a -2. So our dependents we're not going to put in order. We're going to just list them in relating to our independent variables. So our -2 in, we get a -2 out. Okay. How about for 1? We put a 1 in. What do we get? We get 0. We put 1 in and we get a 0 out. So I put my 0 down. And then for 4, we put a 4 in and we put a -1 out. So this is like a T-chart, right? Or a table. And that's just telling us how do these things relate. Place down your x values or your independent values and see what happens with y. Okay, so next for mapping. And your book does a nice little kind of rectangle here for these. And these look a little bit differently and maybe tell us something somewhat about our relationships that we have. And remember, so we're going to start with our independent variables, and then our independent variables or values can be our domain. Okay, that's our domains, what we put into this machine or function or relationship. And then what we get out, again, is our dependent value, and that is our range. Domain goes in, range comes out, right? Okay, so for these, we are going to now list our domain in order of least to greatest and our range in order of least to greatest. And we can kind of see maybe what relationships are happening. So our smallest number in our domain was our -2, right? So let's put that first, -2. Our next number was 1 and then 4, right? So it's least to greatest. Let's do the same thing. Well, this time we're not mapping, or we're not just doing a chart or a table. All right, I'm gonna do our range in least to greatest. So what's our smallest y coordinate, or our smallest dependent value? We have a 0, we've got a -2, and a -1. Well, it looks like -2 is our smallest. The next smallest is -1, and then the smallest is 0. Now, all we have to do is draw arrows, and these arrows are the things that we're going to investigate a little bit more and see kind of this shows us kind of what relationship is happening as we move as we go in least to greatest order. So when we have a -2, again we can check back at our t-chart maybe. -2 maps to -2. So this one's straight across that arrow, and for 1 maps to 0. So this one's going to go down to 0 here. And then our 4 maps to -1. And this is, again, these are just like really fancy vocabulary for a really kind of relatively kind of simple idea. We have these two numbers or groups of numbers that relate to each other. And, you know, the domain maps to the range, right? Or maps the range out for us. Independent, value gives us a dependent value, right? And so now we can see as we go from least to greatest, what happens? Are we going from least to greatest? Well, not exactly with our range. Not exactly. We have kind of this crossing happening. So this doing a mapping kind of just gives us a little bit of different view on our data. Okay, and let's go to the next page to finish out graphing. So let's just graph this guy. I'll draw a nice coordinate system here. X, and you probably did some of this also in pre-algebra. Put your arrows on and label your axes, right? The x-axis is your, and then we can color these. Let's color them. Okay, so this is our independent axis, right? So I choose something along this green line, and then I have my dependent. I get something along the red line. I get something, right? Our y value along the red line. I end up getting that from my x. So let's pop these again. So we've got a 4. I can put a little, some tick marks so that we don't. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then -1, -2, -3, -4, -1, -2, -3, -4. So I'll put 1 there, a -1. All right, 1, -1. You don't have to write all those in. Just thought it'd be nice, right? So we got a 4, and that's our independent. So we are going to choose +4. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, +4. We're here at 4. Okay. Then when we put 4 into this relationship, we get a -1 out. So we end up getting a -1 out of our relationship, right? So that's 4 and down 1. There's our point. Let's label these two. I'll call this one A, call this one B, call this one C. Points. Point A, point B, point C. So I can just put a little A there instead of having to write the ordered pair next to the point. How about the second one? All right, so our -2. So we're going to go 1, -1, -2. Here's our -2. We choose that one, and we get, what do we get? -2. Okay, so -1, -2. So we go to -2. And so -2, -2. Here we are. Let's call this our B point. Okay, and C, 1, 0. So we choose our 1, we get our 0. So if we go up, so we're not going up, we're choosing our 1 along the x-axis, our 1, here we are. And we go up 0 or down 0, so we just stay there at 1. And let's put a nice big black dot here. Good. That's perfect. And that's our C value. So now we can start to see a relationship. Graphing is just another way to see, is there some kind of relationship as we move along the x-axis in either direction. As I choose values going this way, is there some kind of visible relationship? Well, maybe. I mean, we don't really know. We only have 3 pieces of data, but maybe it's going up when our dependent variable, our dependent is going up and then coming back down. Who knows what's going to happen over here? It could be anything. Who knows what's going to happen here? We don't know. All right. So maybe there's a relationship here. Maybe, but again, with 3 points of data, we can't say too much. But there you have it. So that's graphing the data.